It is the ultimate skeptic's weapon and the believer's stumbling block. In Exodus 20, God thunders from Mount Sinai, "Thou shalt not kill." But flip a few pages to 1 Samuel 15 and the same God commands, "Go and strike Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have. Do not spare them." How do we reconcile the God of life with the God of war? Is God confused? Is he a moral hypocrite? Or have we missed something crucial in the original Hebrew that changes everything? Buckle up. We're going to solve the biblical paradox of killing. The first crack in the paradox comes from a translation error that has persisted for 400 years. When the King James Version says, "Thou shalt not kill," it uses a blanket English term for a very specific Hebrew word. The Hebrew word used in the Ten Commandments is ratzach. Ratzach does not mean to take a life in any circumstance. It is a specific legal term. It refers to unlawful killing, predatory murder, or personal malice. If you look at Numbers 35, ratzach is used for someone who strikes a neighbor with an iron object out of hatred. It is murder. But when the Old Testament speaks of soldiers in battle or judicial execution, it almost never uses ratzach. It uses the word harag to smite, slay, or hemet to put to death. So Exodus 20:13 isn't saying no killing ever. A better translation, one used by almost all modern Bibles, is, "You shall not murder." This distinction is massive. God forbids individuals from taking the law into their own hands for personal rage. But that prohibition never applied to the state acting in justice or the nation acting in war. Okay, you say, so it's not murder, but that doesn't explain the brutality. Why did God command the total destruction of the Canaanites? To understand this, we have to talk about a concept called Hirm. Hirm is often translated as under the ban or devoted to destruction. In the ancient Near East, this wasn't just warfare, it was a religious purging. Archaeology confirms this practice wasn't unique to Israel. The Mesha stele describes King Mesha devoting an Israelite city to his god Chemosh. But here is the difference. The Canaanite culture wasn't just foreign neighbors. The Bible describes a society deeply infected with practices that were morally abhorrent to God, specifically child sacrifice and temple prostitution. God describes the land as vomiting out its inhabitants. The command to destroy was not about ethnic cleansing, it was spiritual surgery. It was a removal of a spiritual cancer so that it wouldn't infect the infant nation of Israel. And here is the proof that it wasn't about race or ethnicity. Rahab, a Canaanite prostitute, turns to God and she is spared. Ruth, a Moabite, marries into Israel and becomes the great-grandmother of King David. If you repented, you could live. If you persisted in the cancer, you were removed. Skeptics often argue that the Old Testament God is a tribal warlord who just loves Israel and hates everyone else. But if you read the text, that theory falls apart. God warns Israel in Deuteronomy 28, "If you do not obey, the Lord will bring a nation against you." And that is exactly what happened. When Israel adopted the practices of the Canaanites, God commanded the Babylonians to come and wage war on Israel. God is not an ethnic partisan. He is an impartial judge. He used Israel to judge Canaan, and then he used Babylon to judge Israel. The standard is moral, not racial. So where does that leave us today? Do Christians have a holy war mandate? Absolutely not. And here is why. In the Old Testament, God's kingdom was a geopolitical nation with borders, armies, and a king. Protecting that kingdom required physical swords. But in the New Testament, Jesus shifts the paradigm. In John 18:36, Jesus tells Pilate, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight." The kingdom of God is no longer a plot of land in the Middle East. It is a spiritual reality in the hearts of believers everywhere. Therefore, the war has shifted. Paul writes in Ephesians 6:12, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers." The Hirm warfare, the total destruction, has moved inward. We are to ruthlessly kill sin in our own lives, not people. However, the New Testament does uphold the government's right to use force for justice. Romans 13:4 says the ruler does not bear the sword in vain, for he is God's minister, an avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. So, the command, "Thou shalt not murder," remains absolute for the individual. The authority of the state to wage just war remains valid for order. "Thou shalt not kill" and God's command to war are not a paradox. They are two different jurisdictions. One forbids the individual from acting out of hate. The other authorizes the state to act out of justice. God values life, so much so that he forbids murder. But he also values justice, so much so that he will not let evil regimes stand forever. The God of the Old Testament and the New is the same. He is a God of peace, yes, but he is also a God who is not afraid to draw the sword to excise the cancer of evil. Thanks for watching.